It was supposed to be a standard panel discussion, a calm evening of political back and forth on national television, until the entire atmosphere shifted when Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett took the microphone. The topic had already started to heat up, centered around former President Donald Trump and the widening gap between perception and truth in American politics. JD Vance sat calmly at first, polished in his usual tone, defending Trump's legacy, brushing aside questions about ethics, indictments, and integrity as nothing more than partisan distractions. But everything changed when Jasmine leaned in, her voice steady but her words sharp as a scalpel. "We can argue policies all day, Senator," she said, fixing her gaze directly at Vance, "but let's stop pretending this man is a paragon of virtue when even his marriage is a political arrangement. Let's talk about what Melania really thinks. Let's talk about the private negotiations, the time away from Mar-a-Lago, the silent appearances, the leaked communications, because the public doesn't know half of it." A ripple moved through the studio. JD blinked hard. "What the hell are you implying?" he shot back, the composure already beginning to crack. But Jasmine didn't pause. She had come prepared, not just with words, but with receipts. She referenced 3 sources, 2 independent investigative reports and 1 insider interview that pointed to a chilling possibility, that Melania had renegotiated parts of her prenup after Trump's first indictment, demanding increased financial security and private guarantees in exchange for public appearances. "You think that's love?" Jasmine asked the camera, not Vance. "You think that's loyalty?" "That's business, Senator." JD Vance flushed red. The moderator tried to pivot, but the fire had been lit. Vance erupted. "You don't know what the hell you're talking about," he barked, fists clenching the table. "You're attacking a man's family, his wife. She's not in politics." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "She wasn't in politics when she spearheaded Be Best either, but I didn't see you object then. You can't cherry-pick when spouses matter. Hillary was fair game for decades. Michelle got mocked for telling kids to eat vegetables. Melania is not off-limits when she's part of the performance." The panel was stunned. JD Vance leaned forward like he was ready to leap out of his chair. "This is gutter-level stuff. You're dragging people's marriages into the mud to score political points." His voice cracked, and for a moment, the smooth operator from Ohio was gone, replaced by a man visibly rattled, maybe even scared. The internet was already exploding. Clips were being shared before the segment even ended. Memes, quotes, hashtags, hashtag Trump marriage secrets, hashtag Crockett exposes, hashtag Vance meltdown. But Jasmine wasn't done. "It's not mudslinging if it's true," she said quietly. "It's not the American people's fault that your idol built his empire on deception, and now the cracks are showing. You wrap him in faith and patriotism, but behind closed doors, it's all contracts, silence agreements, and private deals. You want to sell that to the American people as greatness? Be my guest." JD Vance stood up, breaking every decorum rule on the show. "You're disgusting," he muttered, face taut with fury. "I'm not sitting here and letting you attack people's personal lives with salacious garbage." Jasmine didn't flinch. "Then go," she said. "Walk out," like he walked out on every oath he ever took. He did walk out. Cameras followed. Producers tried to intercept him backstage, but he shoved past them, red-faced and silent. Later, he would claim he was defending decency, and that Crockett had crossed a line. But the public had seen it live. They saw a man crack under pressure, not over false accusations, but truths he couldn't deny without sounding like a fool. In the days that followed, the story only grew. Reporters dug deeper into Jasmine's claims. Former aides, now outside NDAs due to legal loopholes, began to speak. One said Trump and Melania had separate wings in nearly every property they owned. Another confirmed that Melania had only agreed to reappear during Trump's second campaign launch after specific financial clauses were met. A third source even suggested that a postnuptial agreement had been signed days before Trump's first arraignment, an agreement that offered long-term financial security in exchange for minimal public support. The political world was shaken. Not because America hadn't heard rumors before, but because someone had finally said it, live, raw, and without fear. JD Vance's image as the sharp, controlled Trump surrogate had taken a fatal blow. The meltdown became legend. Every late-night host played the clip. Political satirists turned it into sketches. But beyond the comedy, the truth lingered. The curtain had been pulled back. Trump's marriage, once paraded as a symbol of strength and poise, now looked more like a transactional agreement between two people protecting their own empires. Jasmine Crockett became a hero to some, a villain to others. But one thing was certain, she had changed the conversation. She reminded Americans that the truth often hides in plain sight, behind scripted appearances and silence. And that sometimes, all it takes is one voice, one live broadcast, to crack the armor. When Jasmine Crockett leaned into the microphone and uttered the words that would shake the political world, no one on that stage was prepared for the magnitude of what she was about to unleash, not even JD Vance, who had sat so confidently defending the former president and the carefully curated image surrounding his life, his leadership, and most notably, his marriage, but Crockett, with the precision of a surgeon and the defiance of someone who had simply had enough of the smoke and mirrors, decided to dismantle the illusion right there on live television before millions of viewers across the country who for so long had been force-fed a narrative that painted Donald Trump and Melania as a power couple grounded in love, loyalty, and unbreakable unity, a fairy tale that had long been protected by walls of money, silence agreements, PR contracts, and denial. Yet here was Jasmine, bold and calm, revealing that this sacred bond was nothing more than a business arrangement dressed in designer suits and rehearsed smiles, pointing out that Melania's long absences, her lack of public defense, and the sudden reappearance at campaign events weren't just coincidental but were in fact strategic and transactional, that renegotiations had taken place behind closed doors after Trump's indictments began to pile up, and that any appearance she made going forward came with a price tag and legal assurances. And as she laid out her argument with sources, leaked emails, and cross-verified timelines, JD Vance's face began to transform from arrogance to anger, and eventually to panic, as he realized he had lost control of the narrative and was now part of a viral unraveling of one of the Republican Party's biggest myths. And as she spoke directly into the camera, saying the words that would be replayed on every social platform, "You want America to worship a man who can't even earn the public loyalty of his own wife without signing paperwork?" The energy in the room shifted and even the moderator sat stunned. JD's voice shook as he tried to interject, but it was already too late, because the dam had burst and the truth was flooding in. She went further, recalling the exact timeline of Trump's hush money payments, juxtaposing them with Melania's absences and sudden renegotiation of her prenup, showing how every step of their so-called marriage lined up with key political moments, legal troubles, and image crises, each one managed not with love but with leverage, not with faith but with fine print. And by the time JD Vance stood up, visibly shaking and yelling that Crockett was disgusting and had crossed a line, the audience watching at home knew they were witnessing something historic. Not just a political takedown, but the moment when a long-guarded lie was exposed live and without apology. Vance stormed off set, his exit only reinforcing the authenticity of what had been said, and in the hours and days that followed, the explosion on social media was immediate and relentless. Hashtags like #CrockettExposes and #TrumpMarriageSecrets dominated every platform. Journalists began digging deeper. Former aides hinted that Crockett had only scratched the surface, and reports began to surface confirming long-standing rumors of separate living arrangements, emotional distance, and post-nuptial negotiations that served more like ceasefire treaties than declarations of love. And as JD tried to defend himself in post-show interviews, accusing Crockett of character assassination and mudslinging, his words fell flat because America had seen the moment raw and unedited. They saw the cracks in real time. They saw a man rattled not by lies but by truths he couldn't spin. And while some critics claimed that family should be off limits, others pushed back, reminding them that Melania had been part of political messaging, standing beside Trump during some of the darkest chapters of his presidency, and that she benefited from the power and platform just as much as she tried to distance herself when it suited her. And so the question wasn't whether Crockett was out of line but whether the line itself ever truly existed when politicians and their families deliberately use their personal image to shape public trust. And Jasmine, in post-show interviews, doubled down saying, the American people have the right to know who they're being sold, especially when the product is a myth wrapped in a flag. And in that moment, she became a symbol of the political resistance. Not just to Trumpism but to the broader culture of deception that had become so normalized, a culture where marriage is performance, loyalty is a negotiation, and truth is buried beneath layers of public relations tactics and sycophantic defenses from people like JD Vance who crumble the moment someone speaks without fear. And this moment, this live exposure, changed everything, because from now on, every time Trump and Melania stood on stage, every knowing look, every brief smile, every forced handhold would be seen through a different lens, not of affection but of agreement, not of unity but of calculation. And JD Vance, once a rising star positioned as the intellectual backbone of Trump's post-presidency resurgence, would be forever remembered not for a brilliant argument or a game-changing policy, but for the night he went nuts on live TV because someone finally said out loud what millions had only dared to whisper behind closed doors.